All right, good evening and welcome once again to Britannia on Freies. And we've got a show lined up for you tonight. We've got an interviewee, Johnson, singer-songwriter from Southeast London, who will be talking about his musical career, his influences, and he'll also be choosing some of his favourite tracks, which we will be hearing throughout the show.
You've just released your debut album, Me, Myself and I. What was that like? I mean, actually, not just releasing a song, but a full album as a solo artist. Like, how was that for you?
It kind of happened by mistake, to be honest. I mean, at the beginning, when I first kind of started releasing tunes under my own name, it never really occurred to me to do an album. You know what I mean? It didn't really appeal to me. At the time, I kind of felt, you know what, I haven't really got like a huge kind of statement to make or anything like that. So I was quite happy just releasing singles as and when they were released. But yeah, it kind of got to a point where it's a bit difficult to kind of share music when you've got songs scattered around all over the place and stuff. And it was really lockdown when the idea of an album kind of came to me, because it was those months of just kind of sitting indoors and working from home and stuff like that. And it was, you know, that was when I kind of went through and got out all my old CD collections and stuff like that and actually started listening to albums in full, which is something that I hadn't done for a long time. And it was so weird, like listening back to records where, you know, each album that I've got kind of takes me back to a different place in my life. And it was you know, that's when the idea sort of come to my mind of, oh, maybe I could do something like that. And it was that period in lockdown as well, where just kind of like, you know, remember when like all rules just kind of went out the window. It was kind of, you could just do anything. Yeah. And so it was just one of those things. It was just like, you know what, I've got a few tunes now, I've got a few more kind of under my belt as well. Do you know what, I'm going to do an album next year, why not? And that was it, really. And it kind of just happened like that.
It's quite a common story I've heard from quite a few musicians, actually, that they took the time during lockdown to actually work on recording and producing EPs, songs and albums. So
yeah, I mean, you know, even though the lockdown thing was terrible for a lot of people, I didn't actually have too much of a bad time myself, to be honest. I mean, being a musician in lockdown, it's a bit of a wet dream, you know what I mean? You're kind of just indoors. You've got you've got no commitments. You haven't got to see anyone. You haven't really got to do anything. You're kind of just at home for hours on end with your guitar, and you just, what do? You end up just picking it up, and you end up just writing, and then that's just kind of how you get through it, really.
How pleased are you with the reception you got to the album? I think it's quite good. How do you feel? I mean, obviously you're going to love it yourself, but what about the reaction from other musicians or even radio stations or the press or anything like that?
Yeah, the reaction's been really good. I gained a little bit of a following and stuff like that, and you know, some of the songs that are on that record are songs that they've heard before. Some of them are new songs as well, so it was great to get them new songs out. And I think the thing that I really am pleased with this album the most is the fact that, you know, I think it, even though it wasn't recorded traditionally as an album, you know, if a band or an artist goes into a studio and does an album, they normally, you know, do it from start to finish, and it's recorded to sound like an album. Whereas this one wasn't done like that. And I'm very pleased at the fact that, you know, it does, just the order of the songs, you know what I mean? I think it does tell a bit of a story, and I think it, you know, even though it wasn't put together traditionally, it sounds like an album. You know, it doesn't just sound like a load of songs just put together. It actually sounds like a record, which is the thing I'm most pleased with. And that's, you know, the feedback that I've got with people have actually said that to me as well, is just, that's probably the best compliment that I've had. I mean, yeah, that was kind of like, there was a few variations that the record took. It was, you know, as I said, I wanted it to sound like an album. So I wanted it to start off kind of all sort of guns blazing, kick the door in kind of sound. And then it was conscious that I wanted it to kind of take a back seat as it kind of goes forward, and kind of goes a little bit more chill as it goes through, and then, you know, get some kind of heavier songs towards the end, because I wanted it, so it was a deliberate decision to have it like that.
Is there any relevance or anything personal to you about the title of the album, Me, Myself and I?
So the title actually comes from a lyric on one of the songs, track 2 on the album. It's a song called 9 to 5. So it's taken from that. But I think also it was to do with the fact that starting off, I never really wanted to be a solo artist. You know what I mean? I never really kind of liked the idea of being solo and just having my name on signs and CDs and stuff like that. I just didn't think it looked cool. You know what I mean? And growing up, you know, all the sort of documentaries I used to watch and all the CDs I listened to and stuff like that, it was never really solo artists. It was all bands, you know what I mean? I used to love watching like band documentaries and just thinking it was like the coolest thing in the world, you know what I mean? Seeing like people with their mates who have just formed bands and they're just traveling the world and living the dream, and, you know, just all that, just kind of seeing people have them journeys with their friends and stuff like that, which I always thought looked so cool, you know? But then it kind of got to a point where, you know, all of my mates, they were either like not into the same music that I was into, or if they was into the same music I was into, they weren't musical, or if they were into the music I was into and musical, they just couldn't be asked, you know? So it got to a point where it was just like, you know, it's not gonna, I could sit around for ages waiting to like form a band and get like a band around me, but, you know, I'm not getting any younger, so I just need to kind of just crack on and just give it a go on my own, really. And so I think that's where the title come along, really, from there, sort of subliminally.
Actually leads me nicely to my next question. What did you do before you became a musician?
I mean, I've always been I used to actually like making films and stuff like that. I was always into film and stuff. So that was one thing that I used to do. So I used to like, you know, write in films, and then we'd get together with some mates, and then we'd go and shoot, and then we would edit and stuff like that. That was it. It was more kind of the visual side that I was interested in. The music thing kind of happened by mistake, really. I mean, I wasn't. I was always a fan of music, you know what I mean? I always thought it looked so cool, you know what I mean? Seeing bands, and I used to go and see bands all the time and stuff like that. But I never like imagined actually doing it, really. And then I ended up getting a guitar somehow. I don't even know where it come from. I think a family member bought me a guitar, and so I started learning a few tunes and stuff like that. And then me and my friend, he bought a guitar as well, and then we ended up not forming a band, but we ended up kind of going to his place and kind of jamming songs and stuff like that, and learning Beatles songs and stuff, which we did for like quite a few months. And it was, even then, it was just like, you know, neither of us could sing or anything like that. It was just kind of like a hobby to do. And anyway, he, after a few months, went to university. So he kind of put the guitar down and got into university lifestyle. But for me, I stayed at home, and I kind of I carried on playing, really. And that's kind of how the music thing started, really.
Now, you released your first song, This Place, in 2019. And last year, I think last year and this year, I'd say in the last 12, 14 months, you've actually been quite prolific. You released quite a few tunes, and plus, of course, the album. Is that just a natural progression, or did you suddenly feel, oh, I'm getting better at this, or more confidence in your ability to record and release tracks, or was it just because there's a bit of a gap after This Place, isn't there? I mean, there was This Place, and there were a couple of tunes, but then you went quiet for a bit.
Yeah, so it was kind of a bit. It went on a bit of a roll. So yeah, we started off with This Place in 2019, which was like, I'll go briefly into like the experience of how that come about. So when I first started writing tunes and stuff like that, I used to do like home recordings and stuff like that, which sounded awful. But then yeah, and this is the thing. I used to like send these terrible demos to like radio stations and stuff like that, and obviously get nothing back. And I used to wonder why I didn't get anything back. And then a friend of mine actually put me in touch with a producer called Erim Ahmet, who is like a freelance producer, and he's such a cool guy. So we ended up meeting him, and he produced This Place. And he can tell by the production on that, he's just amazing at what he does, and it sounds amazing. So that was it. As soon as that was recorded, we released that, and it was just like, well, I need to work with this guy again. This guy's amazing. So then we ended up doing the next tune, which I think was 9 to 5, and then lockdown happened, and that was when the big pause kind of happened. Really, we had some songs that we were like ready to that we're kind of halfway through, but we didn't really get around to recording them. And you know, I like recording, like bringing out songs with like videos and stuff like that. So it was about waiting to like for it to be safe to go out and shoot videos and stuff again and be able to do that. And so, I mean, it only felt like a few months, but then you looked at it and you thought, oh my god, it's been like a year and a half and we've not released anything, and it's gone dead quiet. So that was the reason for the dip. Yeah, so after we was able to get back and do it, and that's when we tried to carry on where we left off.
What are your main, or who are your main musical influences?
So I think it's, you know, a lot of the obvious ones. I'm into like a lot of British bands from the 90s and the 60s. So, you know, the obvious ones like Oasis and the Beatles and the Stone Roses and Kasabian, The Enemy, you know, the usual suspects. They're the ones that have kind of The ones that maybe kind of want to pick up a guitar really and start playing it, just because it looked cool. You know what I mean? They just made it look so cool. It ended up seeing like videos of them and stuff like that. Just think, oh, how cool they look, you know. And that's what makes you want to kind of pick up and crack on.
Now, gig wise, how is it at the moment for you, gig wise? And you were in Stockholm, but I think that you weren't gigging there, were you?
Oh no, that was a holiday, that one. Yeah, so no gigging, unfortunately. But no, gig has been fine. I mean, at the moment, it's only kind of just been like showcase nights and stuff like that, and you know, kind of just trying to get this album out. But yeah, in terms of gigs, I mean, the thing that I think kind of lacks at the moment is that I haven't really got a backing band. So the gigs that I do are all just me, myself, and I, if you pardon the pun. So they're all just acoustic shows at the moment, which I do love doing, you know what I mean? But it'd be great one day to get like a bit of a band behind it and just kind of see how it sounds, just to make the songs just sound a bit bigger, really live, you know?
What's coming up in the future? Are you just going to rest for a bit now that the album's out, or are you planning to world domination very soon?
World domination sounds good, but yeah. So I think just at the moment, yeah, just trying to just get this album down as many throats as possible, really, and just try and just spread the word about it, and you know, keep gigging, and yeah, just you know, spread the campaign, you know. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm still writing all the time and stuff like that. So I've got some new songs I'm going to be working on soon. But yeah, hoping to get into the studio probably like maybe later this year, early next year, and then start working on some new stuff.
Okay, straight from the horse's mouth there. All right, now for people who like your music, maybe listening to this show, where would they be able to find out more about you? Where's the best place for them to look and listen to your music and so on?
So the pages that I update the most are the Instagram page. So that's Instagram/samjamesjohnson, or the Facebook page, which is Facebook/samjamesjohnson music. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the same domain for both, but yeah, they'll be the best places. They're the ones that update regularly, so that all the new stuff that comes out and all the new videos and stuff, that's where you'll find it.
Okay, and of course Spotify, you release.
Oh, of course, yeah. I forget that. Yeah. All the socials, all the usual suspects. Yeah,
the usual ones. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Sam. So we've just heard This Place, which was your first release. Tell us a little bit about that and why you see that as one of your favorite recordings.
For me, it was because it was the first one that I ever did in a proper studio. All the songs that I'd done up to that point had always kind of been like home demos and stuff like that. And it was the one that introduced me to the producer that I currently work with now. A mutual friend of ours sent it over to him and said, you know, would you be interested in working with Sam? And he really liked it, and he said, yeah, come down. So then we ended up working on that one, and yeah, just to hear your music in a studio blasted out the speakers, which are just something from like Star Trek, is just unbelievable, you know. And yeah, just to hear it blasting out, and then to have that as the first single as well, and it was the first proper like professional video that we did. And I just think, you know, it's one because it's such an old song for me now. It's one that I hadn't really listened to for quite a while until we got to doing the album, and it was that listening back to it, you kind of forgot how much like a, you know, not being big-headed, how much a great tune it is, you know what I mean? And just how the production is just kind of stood the test of time, meaning that, you know, that Erim, who I work with, his equipment only gets better, and he only gets better as a producer. So normally like the productions gets better and better for each song. But, you know, listening back to it, it was just, yeah, it didn't really need any like amendments or anything like that. We kind of like smashed it the first time, really.
And the second song that Sam chose from his own repertoire is The Best Days of Our Lives. And here it is.
So Best Days of Our Lives was your second pick for tonight.
So it was quite a funny story how that one was written, really, because I had the melody for quite a while. And when we was in the kind of first few weeks of lockdown, I thought, do you know what? I'm going to write so many songs. I'm going to, you know, write a whole 6 albums worth of songs. It's going to be amazing and stuff like that. And I had a terrible phase of like writer's block where I couldn't really write anything. But that was one of the songs that I did kind of come up with in that period. And it kind of like carried it through all the way through the lockdown thing. And it was that period where it kind of felt like the lockdown thing wasn't ending, you know. I hadn't seen any friends for a long time, I hadn't been to the pub for a long time, and it you know, it kind of felt like, you know, is this it? Like, is this what life's going to be now? So listening to the lyrics of it, you know, it I remember when it first came out, and somebody said to me, they said, those lyrics, a 27-year-old shouldn't be writing lyrics like that. It sounds like it should have been written by like a 60-year-old looking back at his life. But it was just kind of the mood of the time, you know what I mean? It kind of felt like, all the stuff that had happened before, all those nights out and stuff like that. It was kind of like, was that it? Are we never going to do that again? So I think, because it was like, that was like my favorite one that I wrote in that lockdown period. I think that's why it kind of meant the most to me. And it was the one that we recorded when we first kind of got back into normality. And it was the comeback single, if you want to call it that.
Sam's third pick of his own tracks for tonight's show is 9 to 5, and here it comes.
So I'd say 9 to 5 is probably my favourite song on the record, just because it's the song that kind of changed everything, really. I was kind of playing open mics and releasing songs and stuff like that, and, people were kind of listening, but it wasn't really, you could tell at gigs it was mainly kind of like almost background music, you know what I mean? The way that people were reacting and stuff like that. When I wrote 9 to 5 and I showed it to people for the first time, it was the first time when people actually kind of, friends and people at gigs and stuff like that were actually, you could see the reactions from them kind of just like talking and stuff like that. And then you'd play that and people would actually like stop their conversations and actually focus on the music, which was something which was just like, wow, this is like a bit of a game changer. Yeah. And it was a song that, friends wanted to like, you'd play it at like house parties or something like that, and people were like, oh, what's that song? You've played that again. So it was really, the song that changed everything. And when we finally got into the studio and recorded it, it gained like a bit of traction on social media and stuff like that as well. There was a lot of people kind of sharing it on like playlists and stuff like that, and people, it was the first time kind of when like, complete strangers were like messaging me and stuff like that saying, oh, I really like your tune, like, can you send me the chords so I can learn it myself and stuff? And which is, yeah. So I think, that was like a real sort of game changer, that song, when that came out. And, even today when I play it live now, it's the one that people always ask for and stuff like that when they do come and see me and stuff. And it's the one that if there's people in the crowd that don't know me, it's the one you can see that they're paying the most attention to.
You are, of course, listening to Britannia on Freies, and I hope you've enjoyed Sam's pick of his own favourite recordings. Following that, we decided that he would choose 3 of his favourite recordings from other artists. And the first one he chose is a classic from Oasis. It's Live Forever from 1994. And he's going to tell us why he chose that one.
It was weird. It was the first song that I I'd always known of Oasis, you know what I mean? Living in England at that time, you know what I mean? Everybody knew who Oasis was. But it sounds hard to explain, but it was like the first time that I'd listened to music that was my own kind of choice. Do you know what I mean? You when you go to school and stuff like that, you normally kind of just listen to what everyone else is listening to. But that was the first thing. I don't even know how I really discovered it for myself, but it was the first. Live Forever was the first tune that I kind of listened to. And I thought, do you know what? All that other stuff that I'd listened to throughout the years, you know what I mean? I don't actually like that, because I really like this. This is making me feel something that no other music has ever made me feel before. And from there, I think that's where you kind of gain. It's almost like a bit of a family tree, you know what I mean? You listen to your favorite band, and then you find out what they like, what they listen to, because you watch all the interviews and stuff, and then you find out, oh, Noel Gallagher liked The Jam. You think, oh, what's this band? What's The Jam? Paul Weller. He's got a good haircut. You know what I mean? And you start like listening to their music. And then you find out that, Paul Weller was really into like the Small Faces and the Beatles. And then you think, oh, I'm going to check these out. And then you kind of just start going back and back and back. And it's just a great way of discovering new music. And I've discovered all of my favorite bands, older bands anyway, through listening back to what my favorite musicians were listening to. So, and for me, it was kind of, as I said, it's like a family tree. I think the start of that was Live Forever. When I first heard that, that's what kind of made everything spiral out of control.
The second track that Sam chose from one of his favourite artists, or a track that means a lot to him, is by Jake Bugg, and the song is called It's True. And here it is, and Sam will tell us about it after you hear the track.
So it was at the time when I was kind of starting to write music and think about doing music as a solo artist, and actually started to like record like my crappy little demos on the phone and stuff like that. All of the music that I was into at that time, had been and gone. I was late to the party with the Britpop thing. all the bands that I looked up to and I loved, they'd kind of all been and gone. They'd had their day. And then all of a sudden this guy come along who, I dressed similarly to, had a similar haircut at the time. And he was solo as well. He wasn't in a band, and he played an acoustic guitar. And listening to that first record, I love that first album because it sounds very, it doesn't sound like an album that was recorded in one session. Some of the songs on the album are actually demos that they just couldn't get right again, so they added the demos. And some of them are like really professionally polished and recorded. But I remember there was one tune on that first record called Fire, and it was actually recorded in his kitchen on his iPhone. And that was the version that they used on that record. And it was like, that's what I'm doing at the moment. You know what I mean? That's how I'm recording my songs. And he's one of these ones actually ended up on a proper album that I can go in HMV and buy. So it was one of those where I thought, it's kind of similar to what I'm doing. Not that I'm comparing myself to Jake Bugg or anything like that, but you know what I mean? That kind of style. It's the first kind of thing where I thought, you know what? I could actually do something like this. I don't need a band. You know what I mean? I can just record stuff on my phone, and one day it might end up on an album.
The final track that Sam chose from another band for the show tonight was completely new to me. This is a band called Missing Andy, and the track is called Sing for the Deaf. I'd never heard of it before, but I'll let Sam tell you all about it.
Yeah, so it was around the kind of similar time as the Jake Bugg one. They were just a band from Essex that I really got into. They were like a kind of mod sounding, like a modern day kind of jam madness kind of sounding band. They used to be a TV channel on one of the music channels called Lava TV, and basically what it was, they used to do like an hour on there where you could like submit, if you was like an unsigned artist, you could submit your tunes on there, and they'd play it on TV. And it was such a big thing. It was sort of before the days of YouTube music videos getting like quite popular. So I used to love it because they used to play all the classics on there, like the ones that we like the 90s Britpop stuff and that. But yeah, they also used to play these new songs as well. And I just found it on there, and that was the song that was played. And ever since then, I was just completely hooked. You know what I mean? And it was those gigs that they did whenever they come to London, I used to see them all the time. And they were like the first band that I used to go and see like religiously, and go to buy the CDs when they come out and stuff like that, and really follow them as they did their album. And they never really took off, which was criminal because they were just such a great band. And especially that first record, which is an album called Generation Silenced, which you need to listen to. It's right up your street. It's such a, I'd say it's probably in my top 5 albums of all time. It's such a great record. Yeah, so that was it really. So that was the first band that I was used to go and see like religiously. And the thing is, because they were like unfortunately for them, because they were such an unknown band, you could just go and like see them in like a pub in Camden for like a £5. And it was such a weird thing, you know what I mean? Like seeing one of your favourite bands just like that easily, do you know what I mean? Just jumping on a train and then just turning up at like a random Camden pub and seeing one of your favourite bands it was great for me as a fan, do you know what I mean? Because it was, you could just sort of watch and hang out with like your favourite band, which is like unheard of. But yeah, that was the song that kind of first introduced me to them. And unfortunately, they actually broke up this year after like 15 years. And I was lucky enough to be at their last ever gig, which was great, very nostalgic for me. But yeah, that's why I love that tune. And yeah, I think anyone listening, if you're into like that kind of music, then definitely check it out. Missing Andy, Generation Silenced is such a great album.
Thanks a lot, Sam, for joining me and talking very candidly about your career and your music, and also choosing some of your favourite tunes. And I wish you all the best for the future.
Thanks very much, James, and cheers for spreading the word as well and playing my tunes on the show, and that really means a lot.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show and our very candid interview with London-based singer-songwriter Sam James Johnson and his selection of some of his favourite tunes, both by himself and by other artists.